I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Planning Commission Thursday, April 20th, 2023 meeting. May I please get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Krista.
And I will second.
Thank you, Dan. Dan or Daniel?
Daniel. Sorry, Dan. No, you're fine.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is item number 3, which is to approve the minutes from February 16th, 2023. They were in your packet. Oh, did you get a packet? Okay. Okay, so could I get a motion to approve the February 16th, 2023 Planning Commission minutes?
I motion to approve the February 16, 2023 Planning Commission minutes.
Thank you, Daniel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Krista, thank you. There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's go to old business. Zoning ordinance, variances, CUP code updated sections.
I think you skipped one.
Number 4.
Oh, did I skip that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Mary, hold on. We're going back to number 4. Introduction of Mary Nelson, our newest Planning Commission member. Would somebody like to say something about Mary?
Sure. Thank you. Mary, do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you live, how long you've been here?
Absolutely.
What you do outside of Planning Commission?
Absolutely. My name is Mary Nelson. I've been a resident of City of Carver for about 13 years now. I live off of Lano Lane, and in my free time, I garden a lot. I recently resigned from my position with Carver County as a public health nurse to spend more time with my family. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
You know where Lionel Lane is?
I have no clue.
It's in the furthest northeast corner of the city.
I was going to say I got my development map.
Do you know where, like, the water tower is by the cemetery?
Yeah.
It's east of that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it goes Christie's Bluff, the Body property, which is a vacant property, Lano Lane.
Okay.
Now that everyone's
River
looking up
Bluff
your address.
Estates is how you have it on the
125. Yeah.
Yeah, she does.
What I was really wondering is who you bought your house from.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tom Onsor.
Oh.
Well, my husband bought it before I met my husband.
Okay.
He bought it.
Tom Onsor.
Yep.
Okay, so do you have any neighbors called the Petersons?
The Petersons.
Yeah, Vicky and I don't know what her husband's name is. Of course, no, Vicky Peterson lives on, I'm not sure if Vicky's still there, but she lived on Lionel Lane and she was a city councilman when I first got on the council.
Oh.
And I was just wondering if she was still
I
up there.
wonder if she's
Because
at-
Lionel Lane's not very big.
No, there's about 5 houses on
Yeah.
there. So I don't know.
Okay.
I wonder, yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Krista, I'm going to move on to number 5.
I know I'm not.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Got it.
I have a name tag.
Okay.
Carry your mic.
Will you use your microphone?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can't get anything. Okay, thank you. Eric Pershman, council member. I wanted to thank both you, Mary, and Daniel for going through that interview that we made you go through and jump through some hoops. But you both did really well and had thoughtful answers. And that was important to me. I tried to look at that as a hiring board that I sit on at work. I thought you both did a great job. I'm really looking forward to having you start. It's great to always have some new perspective. And Daniel, I'm happy that you're sitting up there now as a regular full member. So thank you, and thanks for going through that process with us.
Thank you.
I'll also mention that Mary came in a couple weeks ago and met with me. We did a Planning Commission 101. So if you have any questions, feel free to stop me during the meeting. Otherwise, I think she'll be just fine. So
Yeah,
welcome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you very much, Eric, for that interjection. Let's move on to number 5 now, old book business, zoning ordinance, variances, CUP code update sections. Aaron Smith.
Thank you. So the version that was in the packet had some revisions that Cindy gave me. There's probably a handful here. But just wanting to go through, see if generally met what we talked about at our last meeting. If you have additional feedback or changes at this point. Krista, I know the formatting is still a disaster.
And I had some problems with some of the verbiage, the way it was hooked together or not. I mean, it's just cleanup of language, not changing anything at all about it. I mean,
Yeah,
about the content.
I didn't have any content changes. Mine was like grammatical. So section 5041, there's like an extra space and a period. And number 4, I don't have any clue what's going on with letter C.
That's exactly what Cindy said.
Like, where did that come from? I think it's right justified versus left justified.
Yeah.
but-
Like, how does that happen? How am I typing and then that happens? Okay, as long as it's not content related, I think we're ready
No, it
to move
wasn't
on,
at all.
and we'll do. I'm gonna make Brenda Good really work hard on some of this and clean it up for me. But otherwise, thank you for working through that. I'm excited to have another section under our belt.
Woohoo! How many more to go?
A lot.
Okay. Okay, does anybody have anything else they want to add about the one section we now have completed? Well, I guess we've completed more than one. How many have we completed?
Probably 3 total.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Shall we move on to item number 6, new business zoning ordinance residential section kickoff?
Sounds fun.
Okay, so thank you for joining me. This section, I think, is one of the more important portions of the work that we do. So it's residential development, which is most of what is happening in Carver. So I wanted to be really thoughtful with this group, get some shared understanding before we dive in and start making some changes, just so we all can come at it with the same information. And when we make those changes, when applications come in, they have more meaning to you, I think, if you can understand. I remember when we did that last year, we changed it because X, Y, Z. So tonight, I'm going to go over a ton of information, and then at the end, I hope we'll open it up for discussion, give me feedback, what resonates with you, what's important. If at any point you have questions, feel free to stop me. So I'm going to get started with some demographic information. So the City Council is just wrapping up our strategic planning process. So from the work we'll do from 2023 to 2026. So as part of that, city staff put together an environmental scan of everything that's happening in the city, everything that we do, things that are important. And I think as we start thinking about residential districts, thinking about who's missing in our community, demographics are really important, knowing who we have right now in this snapshot of time. We'll then talk through our current zoning districts, then we'll look to the other experts in other communities, we'll talk through some goals, and then talk through some options that we have. So starting with some demographic information, all of the information here is put together by the Met Council, so all of this is available on the Met Council's website. It's a really fascinating site because you can compare Carver as a community to any community in the 7-county metro area that the Met Council governs. So you'll see in 2018, we started to see a little bit of a permit uptick. In 2019, 2020, and 2021 went pretty wild. So I think in our highest year, we're at 187, so 187 new housing permits. You'll see in 2019 that there was a multifamily, so the orange, that was Carver Ridge, so something to keep in the back of your head. That was specifically Carver Ridge. And then we started to see much more single-family residential. 2022 brings Timber Creek, so that's where the townhomes will come in, so not yet on this chart. So this is the report that Natalie Meyer puts together every month. It's available on our website and in city council packets. So this was the 2022 information, which I think is helpful for the discussion. So 2022, we saw 109 new housing starts. 2021, again, was our big year at 187. 2022 fell a little bit. I think most communities across the U.S. would probably say that 2022 was kind of strange. 2023, we started out a little bit slow, but we are seeing an uptick in new construction. So I'm not sure where 2023 will fall. I don't think we'll hit the 2021 numbers, but I think we'll be somewhere around that 2019 maybe of 132. So just some interesting statistics. So not only do we have 109 new housing starts in 2022, but there also were 896 other residential permits, so keeping our building inspectors really busy with plan review as well as inspections. So just thinking through those types of projects, so it's decks, basement finishes, bathroom additions. So people are building new homes, but also investing in the homes that they have in Carver, which is telling when we start to get into some more of the demographics. So population, households in the city of Carver, I think we collectively all know some of these numbers to be true. 2021, the Met Council put us at 5,861. I would say that's factual. That was our census number. But I would say in the past 2 years, that number has increased pretty drastically since we've had two pretty big permit years after that, or 1.5, I guess, 18 months. So by 2030, the projection of 10,300 feels really realistic to us at this point. But when you break that down, that's 7 years from now. And that starts to feel kind of crazy that in 7 years, we'll be seeing potentially 4,000 to 5,000 more people joining the city of Carver. And then 2040, we continue to be at 15,500 people. What are you talking about? Was that you? So looking at some of the demographic information is also really interesting. You'll see that we primarily have a community of people that are middle-aged with children. So Carver Elementary, I think, was a big push for that. And the demographics generally skew to people in their 40s and then young children. So the community that we're serving, that's the typical demographic. I do think that's going to continue to change just as people continue to move to Carver, not only in age, but I also think race. I think Carver is becoming more diverse as we continue to grow. So I'm interested to see what these numbers look like in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, et cetera. Housing
Do you have
type.
diversity graphics, like on diversity?
I
Besides
do
me
not
on
in this presentation, but I do in my environmental scan. I'll pull them up at the end. So housing type in Carver, dark blue is single family, which I think we all know to be true, that it is large in Carver. So townhomes is green, multifamily 5 units or more is orange. So thinking through the multifamily projects we have, it's Carver Crossing, some townhomes if there's more than 5 units are considered in there, and then Carver Ridge. This one was pretty shocking for me that you'll see this is considering affordability of new units in Carver. So you'll see in 2007, we were able to add several units that were considered affordable. So what we would want to see is some of that dark blue in the light blue graph. So you'll see in 2017, 18, 19, 20, and 21, there were no units added that were technically affordable. So what that means is 30% of the area median income. So it's a definition that feels kind of hard to understand. But I think the main takeaway is that for the past several years, we have added no units that are considered affordable. So we'll talk through that with some options and goals. But Cindy, it looks like you have something.
I just want some clarification.
Sure.
When it says affordability of new units, affordable, I see that there's, a little bit, what is that? How many units is that in 2016?
5
5.
ish.
What about, Carver,
Crossing?
yeah, isn't that affordable?
So it's owner occupied.
Oh, owner, gotcha,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's okay.
Okay, so there are some,
Correct.
yes.
Renter occupied.
But definitely by looking at this, not owner.
Right.
Which, I just want to add this one thing. When I moved here in 1990, this was a working class, middle class town, and there was tons of affordable housing that was owner owned.
Right.
On the slide before this, when you talk about the townhome, single family, are those the villas that are going in some of the new developments?
No. So a villa would be considered a single family. Townhome is attached.
Okay.
Villa is detached.
Okay.
So I think that, at least I've relied a little bit on saying that there's naturally affordable housing in Carver. So the housing stock that was built in the 1980s, 1990s is selling for an affordable price. So people could come into the community at a lower price point compared to new construction. The information on the screen right now shows that that is not true. So this is the cost of homes that were sold in Carver. So the sale price of $300,000 plus was really interesting, that was the market that was hit most closely. We often think about that $250,000 as being a starter home or an entry level, but even homes aren't selling there of homes that have been in Carver maybe for decades that were not able to hit that market, even with homes that are a little bit older, might need some work, some investment.
What year is this from?
2021. Something else that I think is interesting, but we all probably know to be true, is that the median household income in Carver is higher than most places. So from 2017 to 2021, the median household income was $115,000 in Carver. For Carver County is 107, so we're above the county average. And for the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul metro service area, which is a 7-county area that the Met Council covers, it is 87,000. So Carver is primarily white, primarily people middle age with kids, and primarily pretty wealthy. So things to think about the work that we're doing here, but also just some nuggets of information that I think are helpful.
I wouldn't have thought of that,
Really?
that we were higher than average
Oh,
in terms of income.
yeah, we have been for years now. It's really changed.
But I mean, if you look at Carver County and you're comparing Carver County, it's very different if you're at Chaska and you have Hazeltine versus if you go to New Germany and you have, I don't know what's in New Germany, but, you know,
Some good bars.
yeah, like the diversity of the towns is also interesting how it plays into the income for Carver County.
Yes, that is very interesting. You think there are definitely some more affluent communities in Carver County. So you think about Victoria, I would say is pretty affluent, and then some of the smaller communities. And I would say, like Cindy mentioned, I would say Carver probably tracked in a different place than it did 10 years, 20 years ago, that it was a couple of bars downtown and some working class folk, where now we're seeing so much new development that's coming in at a much higher price point, and that has now started to outpace the amount of construction that we had for decades prior to that.
Well, and once 212 was completed out here, it was like, bang, race is on. Here we go. And that's exactly what has happened.
And we're really
And
interested.
that's fine. That's the way, it's supposed to be.
Right.
I just find it a little disheartening that, like, kids who grew up here, they're in their 30s now. It's hard to afford a house here,
It is.
you know?
Yep, absolutely. So some of
Not
this.
to mention us old people.
So I'm hoping that this sets the stage for some of the discussion that we'll have, not only tonight, but moving through the residential districts, what the work that we do here, how it impacts sale price, and how we can start to think about some of that differently. So I want to talk through the adopted residential districts that we have today. So we have a range from R1 to R3. So R1 is our lowest density residential product. We have this low density residential unsewered product.
Is there anything?
Yeah, it's Diedrich, but that's it. So
Where?
off Diedrich,
Oh, sure.
I have a zoning map in a couple slides. I have this one in red because we would never rezone a property to this because it's unsewered. And to be in the city of Carver, you have to be connected to city water and sewer. So I would say a term for this is legacy, but I don't know if unsewered is a legacy. So a district that we will not be using moving forward, but one that we have right now is an adopted district with some homes in that district. Next is traditional residential, which is encompasses downtown. Again, I don't think we'll ever rezone a product to that. It's our existing downtown. It's the historic district. So if we wanted to change something downtown from like a commercial use to a residential use, we might tap into that district, but you're not going to see this district in our new developments.
I just want to make sure I understand. The low-density residential unsewered, all those are now on city sewer?
They are, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So R2 is something that we talk about really often here. That's our medium density residential district. Most of the products that we have been seeing lately have been in that R2 district. And then R3 is our high density residential. So Carver Ridge is the example I'm going to use a bunch of times tonight. That's an R3 product. And then PRD, which is a tool that we've talked about pretty extensively. So a lot of our developments have an underlying zoning district with a PRD overlay. So we can talk about the good, bad, ugly with that as well. So this is our performance standard chart in our zoning code. So this lays out what each one of those districts, the regulations for each district. So again, the unsewered district is in the red. We'll never use that again. Simply the unsewered portion of it, and then the minimum zoning lot area is 2.5 acres, which, as you all know, we collectively need to get to 3 units per acre. So having a zoning district that allows for 2.5 is not an option any longer. But thinking through the R1, R2, R3 districts, this is, I think, going to be some of the most important work that we do together, and it feels pretty simple when you boil it down in a chart like this. But this chart has some major implications for the work that we do collectively. So things like setbacks. Why are they important? What do they mean for density? What does that then mean for housing cost? So we'll continue that discussion, but we can revisit this slide once we continue on if you have questions and want to zip back to it. So generally, R1 is our largest residential product. So think about the first phase of the Bluffs as an R1 product. So larger lots, larger setbacks. The homes are a little bit further apart. R2 is a product that we're hitting pretty often at 7,000 square feet. We're often being asked for the PRD for the side yard setback to go from 7.5 to 5, and to reduce that 7,000 square feet to usually about 2,500 to 3,000 to allow for that villa product, which Krista was talking about. R3 is generally, I have some qualms with it. Like needing to have an acre for a multifamily site feels pretty large for Carver, thinking about the land that we have, how you might acquire property for multifamily. So thinking through that, we can dial into some of the specifics as we continue.
What is TR?
Traditional residential.
That'd be the historic district.
Okay.
Yep, so again, not a district that we likely will ever rezone to for a new product, but something we might rezone to in the downtown.
Can you
So-
go back to that again, though?
Yeah,
So it's the square foot of the house or the square foot of the lot?
the lot.
Okay.
So thinking through setbacks, I wanted to walk you through and really dial into what we do here and how it affects how neighborhoods are laid out. So this is Timber Creek. This is off Balsam Lane. It's currently under construction. So if you've been through the Lennar product lately, you'll drive these new streets. So on the left is the plat, which is the formal document that you adopt or recommend here. It shows how the lots are going to lay out, how the streets are going to lay out, and things like easements. On the right is then the property survey. So I have lot 17 circled on the plat, and then the survey is on the right. So the survey is what we get at time of building permit. Things that I look at, I'm the person who reviews the surveys. The first thing I check are setbacks. So I make sure that the house is in the right location, making sure that for Timber Creek, it's 7.5 feet from each side property line, 25 feet from the front, and then 30 from the back. Something that's important to think about when we think about setbacks is that it's to the foundation wall. So we get calls about that a lot. So is it from the overhang of my eaves or is it to the foundation wall? And it truly is to your foundation wall. We're seeing more and more that developments are hitting the side yard setback as close as they can. So they're not leaving a ton of wiggle room. Homes are tracking larger. So if you think about a 3-stall garage, that takes up a lot of frontage, which takes up a lot of your side yard setback. So we are seeing homes that are larger in the footprint, really maxing out those setbacks. Something else that I think is worth mentioning is people often will have, they'll have some issues in their backyard with grading and drainage, making sure that lots don't pool inappropriately. So we take the approved grading plan and then I check the survey against that for each property. So I never want it to seem like something comes in and we just don't check each survey, because I think it can feel a little bit overwhelming if somehow the houses look closer together than what we thought, because on paper it can feel different than what it looks like in practice or in person. So when a survey comes in, I check setbacks. I check the home type usually, and then the grading to make sure that everything tracks exactly how we thought it was going to. Then when our inspectors go out for a site survey, it's when a lot is staked. So there'll be stakes in the ground to show where the house is. They measure, so they make sure that the house is in the right spot. So just an exercise to tell you how many times we check it to make sure that the setbacks are being maintained, to make sure that the lots look like what we think they will when they go through the extensive planning process. So again, on the left is the plat, and then the right is the survey. So if you ever wanted to do, check out your survey, we have them on file. We're moving towards an electronic copy, which is really exciting. So I could email it to you, which is fun. Again, it's pretty technical. It shows the general layout of your house. It shows the grading. We use them pretty often for deck permits or fence permits, but always available at City Hall.
I even look at mine pretty often
Oh, wow.
because I've built a house, so I have mine from when we built, and I actually reference it quite a bit.
Good. I'm happy to hear that, but that's one of the nerdier things I think you'll say.
It's helpful for knowing how much actual lawn I need when I was trying to figure out fertilizer.
Yeah.
It tells me exactly how much lawn I have.
Okay. So something else that I picked this one at random. It was one that I had saved on my computer. But you can see that on the plat, there's a pretty excessive amount of easement on the rear property line. And then you can see it on the survey with the dash line and the building setback line. So those things translate from plat to survey. So nothing that's jarring or surprising, but just something to consider, that the information that you recommend approval of on the plat lays out the development exactly how we think it's going to.
What is the dotted line?
The easement. So the city maintains easement on every property. It's typically 5 feet on the sides, 10 feet on the front and back. What that typically allows us for is that if the city were to ever need to be on your property, it gives us an easement so we can exist in that space. This one has a larger easement in the back, which I suspect is a drainage swale based on the survey. So a mound of earth that is meant to carry water differently than you would in a typical yard. So putting it in an easement there gives us some protection that someone's not going into their yard and clearing that completely, which could then damage drainage for their neighbors on either sides, as well as several houses down. Okay, so let's talk through our R1 district and the permitted uses. So in our chapter 50 of the zoning code, R1 district calls for 1-family dwellings, public parks and facilities, public transit facilities, daycare facilities, and essential services. So if it's not on this list, it's not permitted. So just something to think about as we start doing the work here. These are the permitted uses in the R1 district. There are some accessory uses, so you could build a shed, a garage, etc., but you wouldn't be able to come into the R1 district and apply for a duplex necessarily, since that's a 2-family dwelling.
Can you give a couple examples of what the essential services might
Sure.
be?
So essential services are a cover for the city to basically be able to do anything. So if we needed a utility point anywhere in a development, that's typically what we would call an essential service. So a water tower is an essential service. A lift station is an essential service. So R2 has some additional uses. So 1-family dwelling, 2-family dwelling. This is where we start to hit multifamily dwellings, so up to 8 units. Churches, public parks and facilities, public transit, daycare, and again, essential services. And then R3 is our multifamily dwelling, up to 8 units, and then 8 and beyond. Churches, public parks and facilities, public transit, daycare, and essential services. So again, a lot of them stay really similar. It's just that housing type. So it goes from single family and single family only to single family duplex, and then up to 8 units. And then R3 is our higher density residential district. So all of this is good and dandy, but how does it tie into the rest of the work that we do? I hope I know what slide's coming. Oh, I don't. Dang, that was a bad transition. Okay, so this is a snapshot of our residential districts on our zoning map. So the blue in the center is that unsewered district. So our US is right in the middle. It's that blue district where you needed 2.5 acres and it was unsewered. So nothing, again, will ever be zoned to that, but historically it does exist. You'll see on this map that largely a lot of the work we do is that R2 district. So R2 is throughout the entire map. Traditional residential, or TR, is on the downtown. And then R1 is that lighter brown. So you'll see it in the bluffs, and then is like the Skyview neighborhood. So Skyview, Debbie Lane, that general area. So a neighborhood that's existed in Carver for a long time. They hit that R1 district. So in general, I would say we're trending away from the R1 district. I have information later in the presentation I think it's important to have, but I'm not sure that the market is craving that product as much anymore. So the checks on this show everywhere that we've done a PRD. So we've added the R2 PRD, so it's the darker brown on the map. And then this slide I couldn't figure out, I didn't spend a ton of time on it, why part of the bluffs needed a PRD, but part of it is, so you'll see a majority of the bluffs is in that darker brown. But we can talk through the ones that I do know. So like Meadows at Spring Creek, it was a reduction to a 5-yard side yard setback and a reduction to lot size. Brookview is exactly the same. Go ahead.
The Bluffs, I think, needed it for some drainage on Bluffs.
There you go.
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
I wonder if it was for,
And it was for decks and, so they could build decks and like screening porches on
Yeah.
the back of their home looking over the bluff.
Okay.
It was too close to the bluff line.
got it. Or maybe they reduced the rear yard setback. I bet that's what it was.
Yeah,
Okay. Look at that history. Okay, so,
I was there.
and I know that was tricky. A lot of that continues to be tricky.
Yeah, it's still.
Yeah. Jim would have some commentary, I think, if he was
Yes,
in the room.
Jim would. He was there too.
Yeah. So Meadows at Spring Creek, Brookview, and then River Bluff Estates, which are our kind of the northeast corner, those all went for the same changes for the PRD. So it was a reduction of the 5-yard side yard setback and reduction in lot size. The mix of housing type are the townhomes like on Sumac off White Pine Way. Timber Creek, which is the furthest west right now, that's the mix of housing type. So we had single family as well as townhome. Copper Hills was a reduction. Oh, no, that's Oak Tree. Oak Tree was a reduction to 5-yard side yard setback and reduction in lot size. Copper Hills was a little bit of its own animal. So Copper Hills required a PRD because that project included Copper Hills 1 and 2, the Transit Center, and Carver Crossing, and then the potential second CDA building. So that all was tied together in one project. So it was a mix of housing types and uses because the Transit Center was in there. We needed a PRD for Carver Ridge because the density that we had adopted wasn't high enough. So we capped out at 18 and it was just a hair over 18. So we needed to increase our density to be able to allow for Carver Ridge to develop. So interesting commentary. We use PRDs a lot. We'll have a discussion. You will offer me some guidance on what direction we want to go. But I want to give some commentary that typically when you use a PRD, the developer is gaining something and then the city should be gaining something as well. So I had lunch a couple weeks ago with the community development directors from Waconia, Chaska, and Victoria, and Chanhassen. And we talked a little bit about the use of PRDs and just the things that other communities get. So Waconia, for example, gets increased park. So they say if you want a PRD, you have to give us more open space or more park dedication. Victoria, they get additional buffering. So if it's along a county road or a state highway, you need to have some pretty extensive landscape buffering as well as berming. So thinking through those as options that we could start to approach with a PRD. And I won't say that, I don't know if we'll ever get to a point here that we come in and say, yes, that feels exactly right for every project, just because every project is so different. And PRDs allow that flexibility. But I think we're in a position now where we can say, we'll give you that if, instead of just giving it so freely. Historically, we've wanted to see the development, but I think we're getting to the point that we can say, hey, we're here. We can get something back from our PRDs. So, yes, for sure. Yeah, it was pretty fun. Yeah, so just thinking through that, I think we'll always continue to use PRDs. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where it's not part of our toolbox, but I'm interested to hear where this group goes with discussion, if it feels like something we should be using as often as we do, and what that would mean for some implications for our housing types.
On the bottom right, what is that dark green?
That's a U.S. Fish and Wildlife area.
Okay.
So what does this all mean with the comp plan? So these two documents are the most important two pieces I think that this group uses. So it's the zoning ordinance, chapter 50 of the city code, and then the comp plan, or design Carver is what we called it. So this is what when I start to say we need to hit 3 units per acre, this is where the rubber meets the road. So for our residential districts, it goes low, medium, high, and those are the densities per acre that we are required to hit. So it's across the community, so not every project is going to hit the 3 units per acre, but we can have some flexibility to say a Carver Ridge balances a Timber Creek and can pull up the density. So low density is the lightest yellow on the map, and that's 3 to 5 units per acre. Medium density is slightly darker, and then high density, it's just a progression of brown essentially. But those are the 3 districts, so 3 to 5 units per acre, 5 to 12, and then 12 to 36. So a reminder that Carver Ridge was just over 18. So something to keep in mind, that was 70 units, but based on the parcel size, it brought the density down to 18 units per acre. Questions? This is a pretty big piece of it. So something that is important in the work that I do, by the time that I bring a project to you, we vetted it through the zoning ordinance and the comp plan to be able to say, yes, that works in the light brown area, or we need a comp plan amendment. So we've done a couple comp plan amendments, which takes our future land use map and it changes the designation there. It's a long process because we have to have adjacent community review. So any local unit of government that touches Carver has to do a review of it to say, you adopted this, it changes, we have these thoughts. So it's a long process. We've done it a couple times. Like the project that is now Meridian Fields was originally guided commercial, but we were at a time of needing some additional single family, so we went to low density there. And then the Ellen Redmond property, which became Hawthorne Ridge, or the llama farm that was in the center of town, that was a mix of medium and low density, but based on the available land in the bluffs. Once we dialed into it, we weren't able to hit that medium just because we had to net out so much of the area for bluff condition. So something that exists, I will always walk you through this information, but something that's helpful as we start to think about the different districts. Something that we also need to tackle is that we have some districts in our comp plan that don't exist in our zoning ordinance. So for residential use, mixed use is the biggest one that we don't have. So if someone came in and said, I want to do a mixed use project right now, we'd have to slow down a little bit and talk through it. It also would probably require a comp plan amendment because the only one that we could potentially see anytime soon is Mueller's, and I don't think that's happening. So what mixed use is that's what it is. It's different districts together. So our comp plan calls for it to be 70% residential, 30% commercial. So if you think about that as an apartment building with retail on the bottom, that would be mixed use. We also call for 8 to 36 units per acre. So a district that we need to create as a group. So we'll look to other communities that have done mixed use really well. So if you think about like Excelsior Boulevard in St. Louis Park, where the Trader Joe's is, they have the Trader Joe's on the bottom, the apartments on top. So we're not reinventing the wheel by any means. A lot of communities do this. We just haven't had a market for it yet in Carver, but I think we will soon.
Is downtown Chaska considered that, like right once you get into Chaska under the bridge?
Yeah, I would say that probably is. I can't say for certain, but I would guess that's what it is.
I think Victoria has a little bit too, like where their library is. Ice cream store.
Right. Yeah, so good examples from adjacent communities. So we can think through those. We can talk about things we like about those communities, things that seem to be a little bit challenging when we start to draft our mixed use category.
Okay, so we have mixed use districts on our comp plan map, but we don't have them in our zoning.
We do. So as part of the comp plan process, you are required to revise your zoning code.
Yes.
So we're doing that work now.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So thinking through those districts, I wanted to break it down a little bit so we can figure out what that feels like in Carver. So low density residential is R1 in our R2 district. Medium is R2 in our traditional residential. High density, or the 12 to 36 units per acre, is at R3. And then mixed use I would mostly associate with that R2 or R3 district. Carver Ridge, again, is just a good example of our high density product at just over 18 units. So thinking through this and applying it directly to a project. So I have Timber Creek circled on the zone or on the future land use map. I have the information from the comp plan, so you'll see it's the lightest yellow. We need to hit 3 to 5 units per acre to have it work for our comp plan to not require an amendment. The site development data is always on the preliminary plat, so next time we see a preliminary plat, I'll be sure to point out this information just so we can start to apply it to some of the work that we're doing here. But you'll see the existing zoning, it was in the township, it required annexation. And then they were looking for an R2 PRD for their rezone. Total site area includes everything. So for Timber Creek, they needed to net out the right-of-way, wetlands, bluffs, steep slopes, park. So you take all of that away from the area since it can't be developed for residential, so it doesn't count towards their density. And you get the net developable site area, so you use that number with a number of units to get their total number of density. So 107 units. With 349 units, dial all the way down to the bottom, the adjusted net density was 3.78 units per acre, so it's above 3. We're good. Works for light yellow. We can proceed without a comp plan amendment. So just a couple things that we need to think about here, but again, I'll always talk you through that just so we have a shared understanding of how the comp plan plays into projects, but largely what we're seeing is that low density residential between 3 to 5 units per acre. So the zoning code and the comp plan create our development projects. So it has to check out with our zoning code and our comp plan for it to move forward. We can always change our zoning ordinance. So if there was something that was sticky and it wasn't working, we could adjust it while a project is going through the process. We typically don't like to react that way just because it's a reactionary change where we like to get our zoning code in pretty good shape that it applies to most projects. Again, similar for our comp plan, it's our best guess. And when we were working on it in 2018, even when I look at it now in 2023, I'm like, ooh, some of those places look different than I would do today. So we continue to learn more every day about our future land use map. it'll make for a better product. But again, we only do this once every 10 years. So a community can change a lot, especially a Carver, where we're changing all the time. So just two things that are really important to the work we do here, but also setting our residential districts up for success in our zoning code to work with our comp plan. So some adjacent communities next to us. Something I should have said earlier, but I want to say again, is that setbacks are a minimum. So if we have a setback of 10 feet and someone wants 20 on both sides, and if they can fit a house, that's great. We're not going to say you need a bigger house on that lot. You need to hit the 10 feet. So it's a minimum. So something to remember. I think it's also worth mentioning right now is that your set of circumstances are different. Your life experience is different. So your preferences might be different. So if any point, I might remind you to zoom out a little bit. So thinking about single family homes in Carver is great, but there is a market I think that we're missing with some different housing products. So on the screen, I compared Carver, Chanhassen, Chaska, Victoria, and Waconia. So it's our R1 district on top, our R2 district on the bottom. And generally, we all track pretty close together. So the work that we're doing across each community is largely the same, and I would say the type of development that we're seeing is largely the same. Victoria and Carver, I would say, are seeing the most residential development. So you'll see that our bulk regulations or our performance standards really track similarly for what we do. I'll also say that Carver and Victoria also both use a lot of PUDs or PRDs. So tools that we both use often, but what does that mean if we take a step back and look at our zoning ordinance and say, why are we doing it? What does that look like for us? So what we know today, R2 is our most common zoning district. We use it a lot. We use PRDs often. Our housing stock is really similar, so we see a lot of the same product coming in, and our market is really strong. We wouldn't have seen the last couple of years of permit numbers if our market wasn't strong, if there wasn't demand. Cindy mentioned 212 coming to Carver as being a catalyst for the development that we've seen. I think 212 going to Cologne is going to be a similar catalyst for us, that we're not the last stop on 212 being 4 lanes. So I think the next couple of years are going to be just as high permit-wise. I think the market is picking back up after kind of a slow year. So I'm interested to see what happens this year, next year, 2 years from now, just with some things that not only we're doing in the community, but people around us are also doing. So in January of 2022, the City Council adopted a housing action plan. So we came up with some housing goals that this group is going to work to support the City Council with in their goals. So the goals in the housing action plan: housing choice that allows for all people to live in Carver, the ability for all residents to live in Carver for their lifetime, safe housing at every price point, and allow people to have affordable housing costs, which gives opportunity for spending within local economy. So those were the collective goals that we came up with at a city council and staff level in the housing action plan. And my question for you is, how can the zoning rules that we come up with in this room support those goals? So we talk a lot, policy level, about housing range. We don't want to lose single family housing in Carver. It's where we're getting a ton of our permit revenue. It's the market that we're seeing right now. So at no point will I ever say to you that our one district is irrelevant, because it always will be, I think, because there are people who want large lots with large setbacks in a development that feels a little bit more spread out.
The other thing is, if we try to cut back on that, they'll just, hop all over us and go down to Cologne.
Right, absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So what does that mean for development costs? If a house is farther apart, there obviously needs to be more infrastructure. There needs to be more infrastructure in the street. Pipes are longer. There's more asphalt. So the development costs increase. So a question for this group, I think that we can have days-long discussion about, is what does greater density do for those projects? Typically requires less infrastructure, less development costs, less cost of a house, technically. So the development cost and prices always trickle down to the home buyer. So what does it mean if the pipe is 50% of what it was in a different development? What does it mean if there's less asphalt? Greater density typically means smaller lots. So what do those smaller lots look like with smaller setbacks? So if you think about density driving up, it typically is with a lot reduction and with setbacks decreasing. So it's smaller houses on smaller lots. So things to think about as we start to dial into these residential districts. We hear a lot about Clover Ridge. Everyone loves Clover Ridge, which I totally get. It's in Chaska. It has a really diverse mix of housing. It's a desirable neighborhood near schools, and it offers varying price points. So we started to talk internally at a staff and city council level. What would it look like if we had an alley-loaded development? What would it look like if we offered a detached garage product? Again, we wouldn't be making those decisions. We won't say, yes, that's fine in this room, and all of a sudden they'll appear. But if someone came in with a product and said, what do you think about an alley-loaded development? We could say, our zoning code supports that, let's go. Instead of having to go through a process of a PRD or maybe a comp plan amendment. So we could be a more willing partner at the table to say, those things work. Our community is looking for those. So I'm going to stop at this point. I'm going to ask you what resonated. I'm going to look for a little bit of direction, but mostly I want to have a discussion. So what some of this means to you, what direction you would like to go, and then just any questions that you have.
This is a lot.
That's why I needed it to be like a workshop setting. I couldn't give you this and districts on top of it because that would have been overwhelming for
Without
everyone.
snacks, at least.
Yeah.
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 Where's
You are
dinner?
you have the shaved ice machine, don't you?
It's not time yet. It's not.
Oh,
warm.
sorry.
I think it's interesting that we're doing a lot of R2 and the price of the house, how expensive it is, considering how small the lot is.
Absolutely.
I went and toured a lot of the Parade of Homes in Carver, just because I, nosy.
Nosy.
Not that I'm moving anywhere, but I mean, you got to know what's going on in the city.
Yeah, for sure.
And they were all very similar to each other, although they were built with different builders, except the Brookview.
Yes, correct.
So I guess for me, I like the different kind of houses, the different builders that we're bringing in. I'd like to see some differentiation in the lot size and, what is on those lots, not just always single family that looks like your neighbor's house. And again, the affordability of, maybe someone wants a big lot and a big house and someone else wants a starter home. So to have the availability, and then also as you get older, like the goals were to be able to live in Carver your entire life.
Right.
And I think, Cindy, you're a good example of that.
Oh, yeah.
Just,
I'm already on the list for up there,
are you?
No.
I was going to say.
I
But
should probably get on it.
that is true. They are full now.
Eventually I want to be able to walk up and down the stairs in my townhouse.
Yeah. But it started in a
Yep, started as a
historic
single family.
downtown, right? And now I've moved into a townhome with,
Yep.
you have a full HOA, don't you? So
Yep.
no lawn care?
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right? Sounds like you maybe love your grass.
Yes.
You love caring for it
Yes,
on your
ma'am.
survey.
Yes, we do have a lot of grass.
But it is important to offer both sides of that spectrum.
I mean, we chose the corner. We're on a curve to get more width between us and
Sure.
other houses. I think I'd also be interested in supporting the mixed use more. Not that it's zoned this way, but like right next to Quick Trip could be a very good mixed use location. You're right next to a daycare, you're walkable from the elementary school, and you have Quick Trip if you're literally, and then whatever you want, whatever gets put on first level of that. Like I could see that being a great mixed use location.
I'm excited for that one too, just creating that district, because I think it is an easy way for someone to invest in an apartment, but able to get a sustainable rent also on the first floor of a commercial user.
But we don't have anything zoned that way right now for mixed use.
Not today, no.
But we need to.
Correct. Yep. And I am excited. I'm not excited to do the comp plan again because it's a bear to do, but I am excited to know what I know today in the next process. So 2018, I had just started in Carver. So just being here 5 years, I feel like I have the lay of the land a little bit more. So I'm excited to introduce some of like mixed use felt a little not scary, but it was something that we hadn't seen yet. It was something
We weren't
that
quite ready.
you think so? Yeah, we were
In
not.
2018.
Yeah, right. I don't think we were ready, but I think in a couple more years, it's going to be like, come on, where is it? We need that new product.
Yep. I tend to agree with Krista on your assessment of I guess we call it life cycle housing, where, it used to be that like these old homes in downtown were inexpensive enough that a first-time home buyer had some place to buy. And I can't remember, but you said something like 250 or 275 is a starter home? It's
I would
still-
say that's arbitrary based on my own experience.
Yeah, I mean, but I think you're
Yeah.
right. And I understand it's economy driven and all that. But we have to do something to make it able for younger people or people of less means, whoever, to be able to live here. And I know that we can't dictate to our developers, but, you know, like you were suggesting, if we could get something when a developer wants to do a PRD, like maybe you gotta throw up, you know, 3% of the homes need to be small, like this, you know, whatever.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if that'll work, but I would like us to try something.
Yeah, and that's what I found to be
Because I don't
so-
want to have just apartments. I mean, we
Right.
can do apartments.
Right.
I guess it's,
But, you know,
But what would it look like if we had duplexes?
yeah, duplexes, absolutely.
It was interesting when I was
Or
looking.
fourplexes even.
Don't we have some of those? Like, because there's like the 2-story and then there's the 1-story, but they're all attached townhouses.
Oh yeah, like Vernon Drive. Small on the sides, big in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Like off Vernon. I would say it's a triplex.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
Yeah.
They're townhomes, actually. They're just 3-unit townhomes.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I like what we did with Timber Creek, where there is townhomes there, there's villas, there's single-family homes. So, like, I like that concept. But I guess I haven't realized the when you showed where they're actually like kind of small homes right next to each other, and that probably would be attractive for because some people you're still sharing a wall when you're doing a townhome, and so having something where it's a small just house that is not a shared, so you kind of really do feel like you own something.
Right, yeah. When we were talking, or you brought up Clover Ridge, that was like subsidized somehow, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Or maybe some portions of it were.
Yes. Through the land trust.
Oh,
We
sure.
should be looking at that too.
Yeah. Yep.
About partnering with CDA and doing land trust, because that makes the house so much more affordable when the buyer doesn't have to purchase the land.
Right. So to back up, just a quick, do you want to give the 5-second explanation of the land trust? I can,
No, I can't do that. So.
okay, so
I mean, all I know is
the,
the CDA owns the land.
correct. So the land under a house is owned by the CDA. So the person buying the house is only paying for the house, which makes it affordable because you don't have to pay that land cost on top of it. And that house stays affordable in perpetuity because the CDA continues ownership. So when you sell the house, CDA gets first right of refusal. So they typically have a list of people that are looking to join the land trust program. So they would be able to say, we have this house available, you just buy the house. But it's a way that people can build equity pretty quickly.
But also, I think that the CDA gets a portion of the proceeds from the, from the sale of the house.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think it's kind of a good program.
Do we have any communities nearby, or just in general, know of any communities that have like a tiny home development where it's? I guess the one problem we probably kind of have is that it's always a developer, and then they're building the houses
Right.
where people don't really have the opportunity to just buy a lot and put whatever they want on the lot. And
Right.
maybe like they could bring in their own little like a tiny home or something like that. That's the downside of the money's made in building the houses. So if like
Right.
somebody wanted to create a tiny home development, that each person would be bringing in their own little small house or picking wherever
Right.
they want. So they would only get the money on selling the lots.
Right. So I would say our code right now doesn't support it. It would have to be a PRD, which we do often. But then I'd wonder about the density too, where it would need to fall, since it could be so many houses in an area. But that just, I'm wishing I could go back to 4 p.m. today and add some slides. But a discussion that is happening nationally right now is the accessory dwelling unit.
Oh, yeah.
So what does it look like to have a small dwelling on your property with your single-family home that you could use for rental income, or you could use for a family member, or someone you're caring for? So we get calls about them fairly often, just people wanting to add an accessory dwelling unit, typically for like an Airbnb or a Vrbo. But it is a way that you can offer a more affordable product if you can have a rental on your property.
Right.
That is a different unit than what your house is. So I bet Chad Scheller, Public Services Director, his ears are ringing somewhere. A big thing to think about that is utilities. So how do you connect both to utilities? But
Do we
I
have
think
enough backyards to to have room for that?
Some would, yeah, not all. So it would depend on what setbacks we wanted to say. So
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's already permitted to have an accessory structure like a tool, like a shed or whatever, up to
Right.
what, 100,
so
12 by 12, 144 square feet?
under 200 square feet, you need a zoning permit. Above 200, you need a building permit, but they can go up to 900 square feet.
Isn't there anything you can put in that you don't need a permit for? I thought there was, okay.
No, not anymore. That's a
Okay,
pretty
think
recent
about it.
change.
Still
Not
900.
unless your neighbors don't notice.
Truth.
900's a big location.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So they're not allowed in our city code right now. We have some language in our code that says you can only have one dwelling unit per lot. So that's something we can definitely discuss as we start thinking through some of these too. And I think that could feel scary for some people, thinking all of a sudden all of our neighbors are going to have people living in their backyard.
Yeah.
But if we did it thoughtfully, where you need to have a sizable lot and the setbacks are a little bit greater, it could be something where you don't notice necessarily. And I don't know if a ton of people would be chomping at the bit to honestly have a second dwelling unless you have family that visits often or if you're caring for someone. But
I think it'd have to be a development where you know that that's an option.
Sure.
So like
Yeah.
they're built, designed for that, whether you build it yourself or do it later, but like your neighbor could do the same.
right, that's a good point.
So did you say, going back to the tiny house discussion, that our code doesn't support tiny houses right now, that with just one dwelling per unit?
Correct.
Is there a minimum square foot that a residence is required to be, and what is that minimum?
There is in the building code. I can't tell you what it is off the top of my head, but it has to do with like use separation. It's like you can't have a kitchen and a shared bathroom. So you need to have a bathroom that is X square feet, a kitchen that is X square feet, and then some separation between the two. So I could get that information and send it to you all. Did I blow your mind?
The house that I lived in for 25 years, I had a kitchen.
Well, was
a
the
bifold door, there was a bathroom.
I'm gonna say your house was maybe built before the building code existed.
I know my house was actually built before there were bathrooms. Because there's an outhouse in the backyard, that's still there too.
I think it's also interesting how Daniel was saying, like the builder comes in or the developer comes in and builds all the houses. If you would have a development and then you could bring your own builder, it would give some variety.
It would,
Yeah.
yeah.
Also.
I'm interested to see if that's how Brookview turns, that the lots are for sale at this point, that you could bring a custom builder into those.
Yeah, I know Waconia has
lots
one
are
ongoing right
expensive.
now.
Oh yeah.
They are very expensive.
So's the house.
Whoa. Well, I mean,
That house is also expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to stress that the work that we do here, we can talk about all these great things. It probably won't bring them in the next 6 months or a year. But if someone comes in with a different product, we could say we have a planning commission, a city council, and staff that support it through our zoning ordinance. So I don't want you to do all this work and then get really excited that we're going to have tiny homes and ADUs and it's going to be incredible. But we'll lay the foundational work to say we're open to those opportunities. We want to talk about it more. When I was putting together the chart of other Carver County communities, I was shocked how similar they all were. And I get it that we all are looking similarly at our comp plans and thinking through residential development. But I wonder what it would be like to be the community that drives some of those down first and to see if the development community responds to that. So if instead of needing a PRD for a villa product, you can come in, we'll give you R2, the lots are smaller, the setbacks are smaller. That's what the development community is looking for right now. And again, it's the minimum. So we're not saying every lot has to be 3,000 square feet, but we've seen enough of it at this point that it almost, I think, should make us all scratch our head and say, why don't we just do it then?
Let's change it.
Right?
Yeah, I think that I saw that was most evident with the 5 foot width. Like we were talking how we did PRDs. We could ask for things within the PRDs, but then you saw 3 other communities were already at 5.
Right.
And so do we just change the 7.5 down to 5 feet and just be done? Or do we try and ask for things and leave it at 7.5, but then it's going to end up being 5 anyways?
Right. And it's interesting, I think a lot of people would look at a 5-yard side yard setback and say, no way, I don't ever want to live there. But that's one of the times you have to step back and say, I don't want to live there. But there are people that do. Our market wouldn't be looking the way that it looks right now if people didn't want to live in those homes.
right.
What is the process? So a developer just shows up at the city of Carver offices and says, I want to put houses here?
So typically, we have identified the people that we think are going to sell. So it's usually a long-term landowner, like using Timber Creek, it was the Song Farm forever and ever and ever. And we usually get a first call from the person who owns the farm to say, I'm thinking about selling. They typically have been contacted by developers for a long time. So anyone that's on the edge of our community, I would say, is contacted by developers pretty often to say, hey, when are you going? I've got something. I'll give you a good deal. So at that point, they need to gauge their interest and decide when they want to go. And then at that point, it typically is single family right now. So it's the person who will give them usually the most money that can meet our requirements too. So I talk about the preliminary plat step being really important. So typically a developer, once they get preliminary plat approval, they purchase the property. So we get them all the way to that point to say, yes, the project is likely going to work. And then they pull the trigger and formally buy the property. So through that entitlement process, the Farmer Joe continues to own the property. So the developer has the chance to work through to make sure everything works before they pull the trigger and buy the property. So again, that's why preliminary plat is so expensive. It gives them usually vested land rights at that point.
Do we have instances where the original Farmer Joe is still living on the land and like we just build around it?
Yes. So
How
if
does that
you
affect the 3.65 acres house per acre?
So we need to annex property into the city for that to happen. So if you think about the flag house along 212, where Meridian Fields is all in the city of Carver. The flag house is not. So they continue to be township residents. But through the platting process of Meridian Fields, we laid out what we think that lot will look like when he decides to leave and the property comes into the city. We also stub utilities. So that one specifically, in the future, will be 3 more residential lots. So there's 3 water and sewer hookups waiting in the street for when that property comes in. The only junky part is that it will be a full annexation process for that one little piece after we've done the whole swath, but part of the process. So that like the flag house doesn't affect the density of
And that-
Meridian Fields.
That's not the property, that wasn't part of that farm, the son,
Right.
right. That was-
But they were contacted to say, are you interested in selling? We'll buy your property if you want. And that one they said no. The preserve is similar, where one of the original property owners is continuing to live there. They access
Where's the preserve?
Meridian Fields, the preserve, just west. If you went on the Parade of Homes, you maybe went there.
In there, on the Parade of Homes, the far,
It's Brandel Anderson.
Oh, okay.
D.R. Horton, the preserve.
I have a map of all the developments. I'm like, I don't remember.
Oh yeah, Mary, I should send that to you.
Yeah.
Preserve, sounds like something Eden Prairie doesn't it? Okay, so have we finished discussing what resonated? Does anybody have further input in that? Boy,
Yeah, I mean, I just like when neighborhoods are cohesive, but I'd like us to have there to be more opportunities
when you
for
say,
more options.
when you say cohesive, do you mean that you want them like to have a similar look? I mean, like when
Yeah.
you drive around downtown, nothing is the same. I mean, they're all different.
Yeah, so I was in Fargo this last weekend, and they pretty much a lot of it there is just they sell the lot and you build whatever you want. And so like villas are right next to single level homes, and I like how like how we have I live in Oak Tree, and so it's a whole row of villas, or some villas are split in with this the twin homes or split level homes. So like the roof lines are about the same. So if you were to do a tiny home development, it would be a true tiny home development, not just one person gets to do a tiny home, one person doesn't, and that's yeah,
Right.
like. But I wish there were more options of what type of develop or little communities. So if you want a community of small homes, or a community of single family, or a community of tiny homes, or a multifamily, like I wish there were more options.
I really wish there were more options, especially for smaller homes, less expensive.
Are most of the homes being built now HOAs?
That's true too.
It ranges. So if there's a villa product, typically yes, because lawn care is taken care of and snow. But like Oak Tree has villas, but they don't have an HOA across the entire development. It's just the one private street that has an HOA. I would say typically right now it feels like developers are pulling away from that requirement.
Actually, ours is HOA.
Do you have a full one?
Do they don't do your driveways, they do the sidewalks.
No, it's literally just the garbage fee, essentially.
Oh, okay.
And then a couple maintenance.
Got
so
it.
like the Oak Tree sign that you
Oh,
see
sure.
is under
Sure,
our
sure.
HOA.
But they don't do any lawn cutting
No.
or street
It's
plowing?
it's just $40 a month, and I think that just does garbage and a little bit of maintenance.
So if you wanted a
Any
shed,
insurance?
There's an approval.
okay.
There's an ARC or something like that
Okay.
committee. Yeah,
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they just do the garbage?
I think they mostly needed the maintenance, like I think they pay the water for the sprinklers and stuff like that.
For the shared common spaces, that makes sense.
Interesting. What direction are we supposed to give you?
The conversation about what resonated helped a lot. Just hearing
Okay.
collectively looking for some more opportunity for different options. So again, I don't want to get rid of the zoning districts that we have because I think they serve a
Well-
purpose. But
We could probably retire the unsewered.
yes, for sure,
district.
yes, that will not exist anymore.
Yeah.
They also are the
I mean, it seems
only.
like we have a lot of districts. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's just us being open.
So my direction, tell me if I'm incorrect, but I'm going to dial into the R2 district since it's our most used, thinking about our PRDs and being a little bit reactionary to the type of development that we're seeing and try to tailor that R2 closer to what we've seen to potentially bring in developments at a greater density, which could decrease costs potentially. All of this is pie in the sky dream, but I think if we do some of the supporting work, it could happen or it would be more likely to happen. So we'll continue that work. How do we feel about a discussion about accessory dwelling units?
I mean, my comment, it's like my comment before. I feel like you kind of have to go into that knowing that you or your neighbor could do that. I don't think after the fact it might be a little awkward.
I wonder too, like HOAs probably would feel pretty strongly about it. So I wonder if
Yeah, I don't think HOA would
Right.
go for it.
Do HOAs even allow a shed in the backyard?
some of them don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an extra
Mine doesn't.
layer.
I mean, I'm in a townhouse right on a lot.
But potentially with the update to some of the new districts, maybe that's, I don't know how we would do that because everything would be R2, that it would then be allowed. But again, I think I'd be able to count on one hand the amount that we would see. So maybe it could be a process that you have to have a public hearing where
Yeah,
you
I
can
was
have your
gonna say, as
neighbors
long
or
as
something. But
neighbors can give an input on it. I think
Right.
that would be fine.
Yeah, but then we can't really be arbitrary about it either. Even
Right.
with public input, we need specifications, guidelines.
Right.
You have to have X amount of property. Your lot has to be at least this big.
right,
The positioning of the accessory unit has to be, somewhere.
Yep.
And we'd have to come up with, I think it would need some study.
and I'm happy to do that. So if you want me to find 5 communities in Minnesota that have recently adopted it to pull together
Yeah,
what
just
their
to
requirements are.
Yeah, it would be good to know. I'd be
What's
more
the
interested-
difference, like, if you have, like, that accessory structure? Like, if your family's living in it, if you're renting it out, or if you're renting out a house, or you have a house and you're renting it out, the entire house for craft weekends or whatever. Like, you don't have to get an approval if you're renting out your house and having strangers live in it.
No, we don't have a rental program.
It's having that second structure rented out.
Correct.
Then
That's
it's
the
like
problem.
more parking and
Correct.
And generally, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of liked also the idea of the tiny home neighborhoods, and not necessarily they wouldn't necessarily have to be tiny homes, but maybe. I mean, I don't know how do you entice a developer to come and build smaller homes that are going to cost less. Maybe you do it by, making the lots can be smaller.
I think that's what she was saying.
Yeah.
Like the example where you have to do an alley. Like
Yeah.
an alley is how that happens.
And I would say if a developer is creative and open to an idea, if they build 3 really expensive houses or 6 not so expensive houses, you probably are going to net the same amount of money.
Probably,
It's just the density.
yeah.
Infrastructure is so much more expensive. So if your house, if you have R1, 11,000 square feet lots versus an R2, which might be 3,000, the stretch of infrastructure that's required is, at this point, I would say, a hindrance to a project. So it's not only the lot size, so the land size for the buyer, but it's the infrastructure for the developer as well.
I also think there's a difference between a tiny home and a trailer park.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed. So it could be homes fully on foundations. Doesn't have to be.
Like to specify what you're doing there.
Yep.
Like homes on wheels or homes on,
Oh, I see, yeah.
like I don't want to like an RV drive-in.
Yeah,
like,
I don't
for
want that either.
the nice months and drive your RV to Florida for the winter. Like, it's not a campground
Okay.
Riverside Park, you can do it there.
Yeah,
if it's
you
not
can.
flooded.
Truth.
Yeah.
Not today.
Oh, and when we were talking about duplexes and triplexes, what areas are they not allowed in? They're not allowed in,
R1.
okay. Why?
You tell me, you were probably here.
That doesn't make any sense.
Because it's a bigger lot.
I think R1 was just, it looked like R1 was reserved for people who wanted to live where they had true, like, farm area, like, where they have a larger lot and they know they will have one neighbor.
Well, I mean, if you build a duplex, you know you're gonna have two residential units
Yeah.
there. I mean, maybe
But
there's
then
a reason.
But then
You
that
don't wanna live
becomes,
with
that
part of your
becomes,
family, you want them in another
Yeah,
unit.
for
or-
sure. I think
or
that's
you're- Or you're renting out one to help pay the mortgage.
right.
So I
Oh,
mean, I
yeah.
think that
No,
I think that duplexes and triplexes might be something to kind of look into, because that could help younger people who want to buy a property make their house payments by renting out.
yeah, I don't know if it's actually coined now, it's called house hacking.
Oh,
House hacking is the term for when you buy both units, live in one
Yes.
and rent out the other one.
I have to add that definition.
Yeah.
It's in Webster.
What's it called?
House hacking?
House hacking.
That does make sense.
I don't think that's on
We call it house
HGTV yet.
sharing, but
Yeah. And I think duplexes are an interesting example where someone might not want to live next to one, but if it was me on my side and my mom on the other, like it's just creating a more, like a shared version of it, I think is really important. It always will feel like the other if it's not something you've personally experienced, but I think we're seeing that people who lived in a single family house no longer want to, so it's either an HOA product, but a duplex would be a perfect option as well, I think.
yeah. Okay. Do either of you have anything else to add or questions?
Next meeting, I'm assuming we'll do something more related to this.
Yeah. And Cindy is kindly maybe suggesting maybe skipping a May meeting. Does anyone have?
You have a problem with that?
I suppose.
Aaron Schmidt, the city engineer, might have a code revision to the floodplain ordinance, which will be terribly boring. But we can save some of this work, and I can gather, like, I want to gather the information about the accessory dwelling
Get all
units.
the
Yeah.
information.
Okay. So unless there is some flood ordinance that needs to go through, we'll plan to collectively reconvene in June. I also think that the hometown bank plans will be back for that agenda, so we could stack a couple things together.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, this was helpful. Thank you. We didn't
All right.
laugh as much as we typically do, but I feel like we
Sorry
worked
about
pretty
that.
hard. Yeah.
I'm blaming it on Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary.
Dreaming thoughts are all
That's true.
happy serotonin.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
one other thing I want to add is we should be thinking about marketing. I mean, we always think about marketing. I'm sure the city does. But marketing wise, it's better to move to Carver than it is to someplace else like Cologne,
Right.
Victoria. Or,
We talked a lot about that in the strategic plan, that people make huge investment here in their homes, but we are trying to crack the code on creating some Carver spirit. So people love Steamboat Days, and there's such a buzz around that, but what can we do collectively to create some more community spirit throughout the year? So we're thinking about that pretty hard right now.
Good, that's great. Okay, we can move on to, number 7, communications. Daniel, do you have anything?
I do not.
Mary, do you have anything?
I do not.
Krista, do you have anything?
I do.
Oh, good.
I have two things. Did you want to provide any of us an update on Carver or County Road 40?
Yeah, sure. So County Road 40, which has 100 different names. So it's the stretch between Jonathan Carver Parkway out to Carver County Road 61. So it's Main Street West. It is Broadway. It is 4th Street. It is Old Carver Road. So it's that entire corridor. Has several names. We became new proud owners of that street. So it's called a turnback process, where it formerly was owned by Carver County. We have now taken ownership of it.
It's like an adoption.
I'm concerned.
Yeah,
Weren't they supposed to improve it before they turned it over?
we got a sizable amount of money in exchange.
Oh, so
was on sale.
we'll get the, okay.
Correct. So what
20 years ago, we were supposed to get it.
Right. So what we're doing right now is we're gathering interested residents and business owners that are looking to take part in a task force. Krista, were you on the JCP one?
Yes.
So for the Jonathan Carver Parkway project, we had a similar task force that a group of residents and commission members came in with the city engineer, our landscape architect, and provided some feedback about the look, the feel, the operations of the road. So County Road 40, I need to stop calling it that because that's not what it is anymore. But the corridor. Sure. That is true. The road formerly known as Carver, County Road 40. So we're forming a similar task force. Something that's different about this one is that we are being really intentional about the business owners on the corridor. So like the corner where the Getaway Motor Cafe, we're inviting the Royces, Lisa from Lisa's Place, and Greg Witt to be part of it. They see that intersection every day. It impacts their business. So thinking through that intersection really specifically, and then Mount Hope Road and Old Carver Road, where you have to like turn your head like an owl to be able to know if you can turn or not. So thinking through those two intersections specifically, working with our city engineer for best practices to figure out what that looks like. So if anyone's interested, let me know. We're looking for members to join the task force. It'll be 3 meetings, May, June, July, that will go through some options and then give a recommendation to city council.
And then last time we talked about park updates. Have any of those grants been approved?
We don't know yet. We're in for the DNR still. My heart skips a beat. We're working on like the creek restoration at Creekside, so I'm getting some emails from the DNR. And every time it flashes, I'm like, oh, this is it. It hasn't been it yet. I think we'll hear probably early summer.
And then you talked about having kind of community events at the parks. Do you know dates of those so we can put on our calendars?
Are you talking about like the Parks Advisory Group?
Yes.
So sneak peek, we are starting to form what our first meeting is going to look like. It's going to be at Ironwood Park. It's going to be like a construction walkthrough of that park, so kind of a first look for it. We are trying to dial in what the completion date of that park will be before we send that one out, just because we want it to be at a point where like you can see what it's going to look like, but still be a sneak peek. So we have about 18 people right now signed up for the Parks Advisory Commission, which is exciting. So if you know anyone or someone who wants to get involved, it's largely going to be like community building events. So thinking about like an Arbor Day celebration is on our list and a tree sale. So tell your neighbors I want more people.
All right. Do you have anything for us, Eric?
No, I don't have anything to add. I'll add that when I ran for city council, a large part the sentiment of planning commission, everything look forward to, recommendations we bring forward to city council.
Great, thank you. All right, does anybody have anything else? If not, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
A second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? This meeting is over.